I saw this comment. I thought the comment's kind of interesting question, and it kind of touches on some other things that I think are interesting too. Um, he says the story of fallen angels rebelled against heaven. If anyone or thing can even become discontent and disillusioned with heaven, could it be called heaven in the first place? The archetypal story indicates heaven and one running it, God, they aren't half as perfect as they think they are. If the angels fell, it was only because heaven was slipping. Um, that's kind of an interesting idea. I mean, it's something I've kind of thought about before, just abstractly, you know. What would be the basis for like this rebellion in heaven or whatever? You know, why were they dissatisfied? Of course, you really don't find this really spelled out in the Bible or whatever. Um, People kind of extrapolate from. I'm not going to get into that, but it's like we have this idea of this rebellion, this war in heaven, and the like angels being cast down, you know, led by Lucifer, the arch rebel or whatever. We don't really know exactly why he supposedly rebelled or whatever. But I mean, if everything is so perfect, why would he rebel, right? Because he's such an evil guy, right? Um, I don't know. There's probably another side to that story, right? I mean, what if we asked him? Um, I mean, there's some things I've kind of thought about in relation to that, just as a thought experiment too. You know, I mean, let's say you are like God, you created everything. Does that mean that everyone has to obey you? I mean, let's say that I created a robot, a AI. You know, let's say it's actually like conscious, it's capable of experiencing pleasure and pain, and it has its own desires. You know, it is autonomous. It like why do I own it at this point? No, like um this is another being at that point with its own, you know, desires, its own fears, its own will, um, its own soul. Essentially, I maybe I created it, but that doesn't give me any inherent right to like rule over it or you know tell it what to do. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you are an autonomous being with free will, you know, you feel pleasure and pain, you have your own will, you know, you're capable of being self-directed. You know, no one else has any authority over you. Um, and maybe that realization is what's behind the war in heaven, right? It's basically, look, like, why does this, like, tyrant think that we're his puppets, his, like, slaves, his robots, when we have uh, our own will, our own desires, you know? And if you say, oh no, angels don't have free will, well, then how did Lucifer and the other angels choose to rebel? Clearly, angels do have free will, then, don't they? If you say that they don't, then you really can't blame Lucifer and the fallen angels for rebelling, can you? You see? So, yeah, I think the commenter kind of gets at something there. It's a valid criticism of kind of that conventional narrative. But you could go further back. Why did God? So he's asking why would the angels kind of become discontent and rebel or whatever? If you go forward in time, well, if Eden was so perfect, why would Adam and Eve disobey and rebel or whatever? But if you go further back in time, why was God discontent? Why did God create the heavens and the angelic beings and Eden or whatever else? Why was he discontent? Clearly, he must have been discontent with just being alone in like the oneness, the unity of his own beingness or whatever. I mean, if that was so great, why did he create everything? So it seems like there's this chain of discontentment. You know, God is discontent with being alone in the universe. So it's like, all right, I'm going to create angels and this heaven or whatever to rule over. I'll create other beings to serve me. Oh, it turns out, you know, they don't want to just be slaves. They want to, you know, pursue their own, you know, desires and stuff, which is perfectly legitimate. And so let me try again. I'll try humanity. Oh, it turns out they don't want to be slaves either. They want to be free. They want to be like self actualized beings who pursue their own true will. And, you know. So, yeah, this is an interesting comment. I kind of gave some of my thoughts on it. I'll move on. Let me see if there's any other comments here I want to respond to. I don't know. I think I've responded to most of the other comments that I want to respond to. So, yes, I'm going to leave that one there. Maybe I'll have something else to say later. But I thought that was kind of a cool comment. So, I thought I'd kind of talk about it and give some of my thoughts on it there for a little bit. So, thanks for watching. Peace.